Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries Leadership Development Podcast. My name is Michael Clark, host of the podcast, and I'm joined today by Jessica Leong. Am I saying that right, Jessica? I should have asked you
Yep.
that
No,
before we
that's
started
perfect.
recording. Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
It's really good to be here.
So, for those that might not be familiar with Jessica, let me give you a little bit of her bio and then we'll dive into some questions. So, Jessica is currently the CEO of Octagram Analytics, a firm that she founded in 2022, which is an actuarial consulting firm focused on property and casualty pricing. She is the former head of data and analytics at Zurich North America. She is a past president of the Casualty Actuarial Society. A few other interesting tidbits about Jessica. It was actually when she was, I believe it was when you were president elect of the CAS, when I was president elect or president of the Conference of Consulting Actuaries, where we first met at a North American Actuarial Council meeting. And if I remember right, you were very pregnant at that time.
Yes, yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and now have two kids, if memory serves me. And we've had people on this podcast from a lot from North America, the Caribbean, Europe, and now with Jessica, we have somebody from Australia. So that's we get a first with this one, almost 50 episodes into what we're doing here. The one interesting thing about Jessica and her company, Octagram Analytics, is that Octagram is primarily U.S. based, but Jessica works in Australia, so she works U.S. hours from Australia, which is probably a that's probably hard to do when you've got a couple little kids running around and you're working U.S. hours from Australia. That's got to be challenging.
Yeah, it actually works pretty well because I start really early and then I'm done when they get out of school, which is great.
That works great then. Um, a few other interesting tidbits about Jessica that she was telling me before we started recording. She's big into crafting, and she started naming some things, and I'm really curious to get you to elaborate on some of this. But like making your own clothes, making furniture. Okay, so what kind of things do you make, and why do you do this?
Yeah, I like making things. I don't know why. So I'm making it's warm in Australia, so I'm wearing a pair of shorts under this screen and I made those. And then I made I don't make that much furniture anymore, but I had a built-in bookcase in New York City in our apartment there, and I made that as well. Yeah, so clothes and useful things, I guess. Yeah.
That is incredible. I can't. I mean, the furniture I've seen people do that. I've not seen too many people make their own clothes though, and that's admirable.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks.
well, Jessica, let's start in because I want people to understand a little bit more about your background and just your career journey in general. What led you to be an actuary in the first place?
Yeah, probably like a lot of people, right? I was good at math and I wanted to make money. I mean, to be very blunt about it. So my
That's
dad,
fair.
who was an engineer at the time, I think it was like 15 or 16, heard that a friend of ours had started studying actuarial and thought, this was before really the internet took off. So, pretty old. But that's how we found out about it. And he thought it would be a good career for me. And, the rest is history.
So you looked into it. You said, "Yep, that sounds good. It
Yeah, pretty
checks
much.
those two boxes. I get to do math and I get to get paid."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So talk to us a little bit about your career progression. I think people will be curious about the international nature of a lot of the different positions you've held. Where did you start and how did that kind of progress through time?
Yeah, good question. So, look, let me start from the very beginning. I was born in Malaysia, and I'm Chinese, by background. And then we moved to Australia when I was 5. So, I grew up in Australia. And then my first graduate job out of university was in London. So, I worked for Willis Towers Watson there for about 4 or 5 years. And then I moved to New York, where I stayed for like ages, longer than I thought I would, like 20 plus years, and then moved to Chicago and then now back to Australia. So it has been a roaming career. I'd say the good thing about the actuarial profession is that the credential matters the most, right? No one cares where I went to university. Um, And there's mutual recognition in most places, especially, I got my fellowship through the Institute of Actuaries here in Australia, um, and just got mutual recognition through the Institute of Actuaries over in the UK, and then also the CAS in the US.
Interesting. All right, so
Yeah,
you talk to us a little bit about some of the positions you've held. So you've always worked in property and casualty, is that right?
yeah, that's right.
Um, and you were on the consulting side with WTW. We mentioned you worked for Zurich. Like, what kind of things were you doing for these organizations?
Yeah, good question. I started off doing lots of reserve reviews, and but always on the PNC side. So at Willis Towers Watson, and then I would move to Milliman in New York. I haven't had that many jobs actually. Um, then I moved to Guy Carpenter, where I was doing much more. I was in their advisory team. So the interesting thing about the reinsurance brokerage firms, they have these, advisory teams, and frankly, our job is to just show that we know lots. And so please use us for brokerage, which was a fun job. You speak at a ton of conferences, you do research, and they pay you for it, which is fun. Um, and I was there for maybe 3, 4 years, and then I moved to Zurich, where I was head of data and analytics. And that was a more, a lot of my jobs in the past were more luck and chance, but the Zurich one was me deciding. I guess it's more than a decade ago that I wanted to get into data and analytics and data science, because that was clearly the way forward. And so I very deliberately made that choice and found a job that fit into that. And then at Zurich, yeah, I was there for 7, 8 years, and I really loved it. I would recommend for any actuary to work inside, especially on the PNC side, right? Um, Work inside a carrier. You find out so much more about the actual business of insurance inside a carrier, and that I found fascinating. And what I also loved about data and analytics is that you have more so than reserving or risk, you have a chance to really make a difference to, frankly, to be fair, with reserving, you actually do make a massive difference to the bottom line because obviously any change in reserves just like shifts your profitability hugely. That aside, with data and analytics, it was your way of trying to see how analytic can actually impact profitability incredibly directly. And that was really rewarding.
So was that role that you had as head of data and analytics, was it still actuarial in nature?
Yeah, good question. Yes and no. So ultimately in that team, I was leading a big team of maybe 60 people, and maybe only five of them were actuaries, right? So most of the team were data scientists, data engineers, analysts, not actuaries. Um, so was it actuarial in nature? Well, it's all about analytics and insurance. So in that way, yes. Were we doing traditional actuarial things? Sometimes, like building pricing models, but also sometimes not. So yeah, it was a mixture.
How was that? Like, and we hear this a lot, right? As predictive analytics, data analytics has become more prevalent in society. And we like to distinguish ourselves as actuaries as being different from the data analytics side. But having worked with those teams, those types of teams, like how does your actuarial skill set either complement or enhance what a team of data analysts might be doing?
Yeah, great question. I think actuaries are a really good intersection between the domain knowledge and the actual analytics knowledge, and bringing those together is key to getting value out of analytics, frankly. So that would be the major difference between an actuary and a data scientist, that as an actuary, you sort of naturally have the domain knowledge in insurance. Um, I think one of the things I did when I was part of the leadership within the CAS is just make sure that vision, our vision used to be just to be really great actuaries, right? We'll be the best actuarial organization on the planet was basically the vision. It wasn't that literally that, but essentially that's how it read. And we changed it to something much more directional and tangible, right? Which is basically we do general insurance, basically P&C insurance, and we'll be the best at doing analytics for P&C insurance, basically. And whatever that analytics entails, whether it's traditional actuarial analytics or data science, or, I'm sure in another 20 years we'll have something else that's not data science, like all this AI stuff, right? Whatever that is, if it is useful for, P&C insurance, we'll do that too, right? Um, so I think that hopefully provides some level of clarity about what it is that we do as actuaries, right? And it's not just actuarial science, which
Mhm.
again, what is that then, right? Is it just everything we've done in the past and we can't move forward, or is it something, more specific, hopefully, and useful, right?
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, especially because you can consider some of those skill sets that are being taught to students today on the data analytics side. And how can we embrace those? How can we learn from those? How can we apply the actuarial rigor to those with the backdrop of an insurance or a risk management framework, right? To enhance what we can do as an actuary. Like you said, it's data science today. 20 years from now, what will the next thing be, and how can we embrace it and actually have it benefit the profession?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've jumped around a little bit, like you said. It's not like you've worked for a lot
Mm,
of companies, but you've worked for companies in different places and different types of companies.
yeah.
What have you learned as you've moved in these different geographies and these different types of companies? Like, what things stick out to you as you're like, oh, this is some of the life lessons that I've taken away from these different moves?
Um, Good question. Um, I don't know. I would say early in my career, I learned a lot. I say as a, yeah, if I were to give advice to somebody, early in my career, I learned a lot from my peers and other people starting out. And I was lucky enough to start out at a company, a WTW, that had a lot of other people starting out and it hired obviously some really great talent, right? And so just watching them and what they did, I learned a lot about how to approach my own work and approach my own career. And I would say early on, honestly, just pass your exams as quickly as possible. That's certainly how I approached life, which is not which is not a bad, honestly. If you're going to prioritize something, I hate to say it, it's not the work, it's your exams, right? As your career. It is what it is.
Yeah, early on, there's some
Yeah,
truth to that, I think.
yeah. And then second to that would be learn the business, right? And that's probably one thread. And I didn't do this early enough, right? If I think about my early career, my priority was like learning how to do things really fast in Excel, right? Like I've written this great VBA code. I've like done this awesome like thing to like make sure we can print 200 exhibits really quickly. Um, and that will not take you very far, strangely enough. Why I didn't realize this at the time, I don't know, but I remember one of my peers who's doing very well now, he was like, Jessica, you don't see any of the partners knowing how to do VBA, do you? Like that's his point being, like, this is not what will get you to partnership, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes. And I was like, yeah, good point. Yeah, so definitely learn the business and always know like what are you doing and what is the business goal? You're not just multiplying these two numbers together for no
Mhm.
reason, right? Like you're doing it for an actual business goal. And I'll say lots of actuaries can get away from that, right? I've interviewed so many actuaries that have described what they've done. Like one guy was explaining this really complicated thing he'd done to smooth out auto rates by zip code, right? Very complicated math. I had no idea what he was talking about. But in the end, I was like, what was the point of that then? Like, you spent like a year doing this. Why? He could not tell me. Like, okay.
It loses some of its edge, right? It's cool, but to what point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, I think that's really good advice, right? I mean, understanding the business that you're working for, understanding how you contribute to what they're trying to accomplish. They're the kind of business with a big B, right? And and just figuring out how you can more successfully contribute to that. And maybe it is developing a cool model as long as that fits within what the business's plans are for growth and for efficiency, whatever the case may be, right? Whatever the business is trying to accomplish. No, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So you a few years ago you start your own company, Octagram Analytics. I want to talk about that for a few minutes. So first of all, give us an overview of what you're doing at Octagram, and maybe to even use your own put your own words back on you. What's the why here? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, good question. I'll tell you why I started the company. Because I wanted the next challenge in my career. And I will say, once you get to a certain level of seniority, you either settle into that, right? And if you want to stretch yourself, you're going to have to make a lot of compromises personally, moving countries, moving. There aren't that many other actuarial jobs where you lead, 100 people group teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make some personal compromises or get very creative. And so that's why I started Octagram. I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'll say I started it without much thought as to what I would do. I was like, I'll just hang out my shingle and see what happens. Like, I'm sure something will come to me. Like, I'll do something. Um, and here we are. So look, at what we've come to do at Octagram is focus on pricing, right? And pricing within the property and casualty space. And so we've done a few things. So first of all, we built half the business with bespoke pricing models. We help clients with their pricing models. And then the other half of the business, we have products that help with pricing. So our first product is called Fire RQ. You give me an address, we'll give you a fire risk score for that particular address. Um, and yeah, it's been going well. It's honestly a lot of I always thought I was a very business-minded actuary, right? In that I, like I said before, one of the important things is to understand the business of insurance, blah, 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 blah. But this is business on another level, right? This is not, yes, it's important to understand the business of insurance, but actually having your own business is very,
Mm-hmm.
very different. And that has been really interesting learning about myself, what I like about having my own business. Like, honestly, if you want to be good at having your own business, you have to be the kind of person who would almost enjoy going to your boss and talking about your next pay rise, right? Because you are talking about money and how much is this worth to you? How should this deal be, right? All the time and negotiating money a lot. So do you like that or not? All right. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard it framed that way, but I can absolutely see that. I think that's that's a really good way to put it. Let's dive into some of these things that you've learned as you've gone along the way. I'm curious, especially about what challenges you faced that you didn't anticipate when you first envisioned starting Octagram.
Yeah, good question. I did not envision, oh, so many. I'll say I read lots more legal documents than I guess I didn't think about that part. But yeah, when you have your own business, you read a lot of legal documents. So many non-disclosure agreements, so many other agreements. You have to create your own legal documents that unfortunately you have to read. Yeah, so that's one. Um, and then yeah, the whole business thing and having to like, I made this product via RQ, right? How do you license it? I don't know. Just come up come up with something. Just make it
Yeah,
up, right? What is the business model around this? I don't know. Like no one is there.
yeah.
No one is there. I guess I will say when I had a job, I knew every day if I show up, this is what I need to do to be successful, right?
Hmm.
Having your own business, you actually do not know. What do I need to be successful? I have no not that you have no idea, but you could do so many things, right? Should I
Yeah.
focus on improving the model? Should I focus on the way we're marketing? Should I focus on the sales process? Is it big? I don't know.
There's lots
Like,
there's lots of levers to pull there, right?
there is
Yeah.
no answer to this, right? How should we license this product? Should we do it yearly? Should we try to do 3-year deals? Should I just let people use it on the fly? There's no answer to this, right? There is like another level of uncertainty where you just have no idea, but you just pick something and you go with it and you see what happens. And I guess I never had that in my, like, in having actual proper jobs,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I'll say that's been really interesting environment to work in.
A lot more trial and error then in terms of your
Yeah,
day-to-day focus.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, kind of big takeaways. You've been in this now for 4 years,
Yeah.
right? You've obviously had to learn some new skills, adapt. Like,
Yes.
what are for you though? Like when you look back on the last 4 years, like what are those big takeaways that you're like, when I look back on Octagram so far, like these are my biggest like key learnings that it's kind of similar to the last question that I asked in terms of the challenges that you faced, but I guess around, do you regret this? I don't think you do, but
No.
um, but so if you're proud of what you've done, like what is it about the process that you've gone through that you look at and you point to and say, I am super proud of what I've been able to do here.
Yeah, good question. Look, I started this by seeing, like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur to see if I could make something out of nothing, right? So that I'm proud of, right? That I have a company and I'd love this company to outlast me, right? So I didn't name it after myself, blah, blah, blah. Um, so I want to see if I can make something out of nothing. And we're still in the process of making, right? Um, and in terms of like some of the big takeaways, it is if someone else were to think, should I be starting this myself? And look, people start, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs in the actuarial space, and they all have different aspirations, right? I'd say a lot of actuarial people who do what I've done just want to do what they were doing before, but just work for themselves, right? So
Hmm.
that's a little bit different. Um, I'll say a big learning is, and if you were to want to try this yourself, is that yeah, no one can. You're just going to have to try things and put it out there and then see what happens. And it is really hard to know what will work and what won't work. And you got to like that level of uncertainty, right? So
Yeah,
I'll use
yeah, I
an
was gonna say there's a
example.
lot of yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of risk there, right? Which a lot of
there is a
actuaries
ton
just
of
by
risk.
nature are uncomfortable with.
Yes, that's true. There's a lot of risk and there's a lot of uncertainty. And yeah, I joined some groups and workshops of people who do this for startup companies, right? That proclaim to tell you this is the solution to like solve your business, right? If you follow these steps, you'll have a successful business. They're sort of helpful, but in the end, no one can tell you how to start a successful company, right?
Hmm.
If they could, like if someone could just
Everybody
tell
would
you
be doing
exactly
it.
what to do to like make a McDonald's, right? Like we'd all be billionaires, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole point is that this is really hard. And I've tried some things and they bombed, right? Like, you read this book about how to be oversubscribed and then you put your offer out there and like, no one wants it, right? Like, and you're like, oh, hmm. Um, and then I've tried other things and they've been, people have wanted it, right? It's been really successful. So honestly, it is really, really hard. And the only thing you can do then in that environment is just you put stuff out there, which takes time because you want to put good stuff out there, right? And then it either works or it, frankly, do not be surprised if
It's
it
kind of a
doesn't.
wait and see and adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And if, yeah.
how do you deal with those times when it is really hard, when you're going down a road and it doesn't work out? I mean, that can be discouraging. So how do you manage through that for yourself?
I don't know. So I'll give you a really concrete example, right? We've put out, so far as a company, we put out 2 ebooks. And the first one just bombed, right? The first one was an ebook about what startup MGA founders should be doing in terms of analytics, right? Because that was our early client base was all these startup people creating startup MGAs. And I thought, right, like a lot of these people, some of them are from inside insurance, but some of them are from outside insurance. It would be helpful to have this guide, right? Um, to tell them, this is how long it takes to do a rate filing. This is what you should be doing in terms of setting up your data and monitoring it, right? This is why. And that did not go very far. No one wanted that book, blah, blah. I don't know why, still to this day, do not know why, right? And then we released our second book, which was called The Little Book of Fires, right? And it did much, much, much better, right? We've had like, I don't know how many downloads now, hundreds, if not thousands of downloads of that book. It has a whole bunch of information about this is the backbone of our product, right? But it has a whole bunch of information about how fires start in the US, right? If you live in a home, usually it starts in the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And that has done much, much better. Is it like why that is? I guess it's full of like actual information and data. We did get a graphic designer to make it look like it looks like totally legit, right? It looks great. Like a Willis Towers Watson put it out type look, right? Like really
Hmm.
legit. Was that it? I don't know. But it worked really, really well. And the product is also, we're finding it much more compelling, right? People are interested, they want to try it out. Again, why this one worked and the other one didn't, I couldn't tell you why. But I guess it's good that I don't know, is it good that I kept going? Yeah, I guess so.
Well, so let's talk about that actually, because I'm curious. Because why did you say, okay, the first one didn't take off like you hoped it would, which has got to be discouraging at some level.
Yeah.
So how do you say, well, let's do it again?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
because you had to, I imagine, and you tell me if this is off base, right? You probably had some instinctual feeling that there is an appetite out here for this topic, and let's just try it a different way and see if we can put something out there that can get a little bit more traction.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that fair to say?
Yeah, I guess so. I had seen in between the times you read other people's collateral, right? And you figure out what's compelling. So Hyper
Mhm.
Exponentials is a good example of that. So they are a wildly successful startup. They create a piece of pricing software. And I read one of their ebook PDFs where they had been interviewed a whole bunch of actuaries about pricing in the PNC space. And I thought, wow, this is a great piece of collateral. I found it compelling. It looks fantastic. Like this works, right? So at least it
Mhm.
worked for me the other way around, right? So
Yep.
like something like this obviously works. I'm gonna try it again. Yeah.
Excellent. So now that you've done two, have you done more than just the two ebooks, or is it just those two
That's
for
it
now?
so far. We want to put out a next edition of our little book of fires. Yes, it's been on the
All right.
cards for like over a year now. So yeah, it's hard to find time to get it all done as well.
I imagine as a business owner that becomes one of the scarcest resources that you have is just your time to do what needs to be done
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
regular basis. So, last question on Octagram. Tell me about the name. You mentioned you wanted this to last beyond you, and so you didn't name it after yourself. And so
Yeah.
why, what significance does Octagram
Oh
as a
God.
name have for
Yeah.
you?
Honestly, a lot of name choices, and I'm sure this is the same for any company, is what is available on the internet. Oh, right. So you think of all the names you can think of, and then you see what URL is available. And the intersection of that works. And Octagram, look, it's a number of some sort, right? Eight. So that's good. I had long really liked the name of a company called Pentagram. Pentagram is a, have you heard of Pentagram?
No.
A pretty they're one of the biggest graphic design firms in the country. Um, if you're in that space, they're pretty famous. And I was like, okay, well, it can't be pentagram, obviously. Let's keep going up until we find something that's available. And we went with Octagram.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, having been part of that process at another company, it is tougher than you might think to come up with a name that A works and B is available.
Yes, exactly.
It is much more challenging than you think it should be. That's for sure. Well, let's switch gears again. I want to talk about just your views on leadership. You're obviously somebody who has been in leadership roles within the companies that you've worked for, within the profession, within the CAS, and now as the head of your own company. When you think about people that you consider to be successful leaders, what traits do they have? How do they demonstrate that leadership?
Yeah, good question. Um, to me, leaders need to have a vision and a direction. Because if they're not going anywhere, how can you follow them, right? Like if they don't have like a strong point of view, how can you follow them?
Yeah.
Which I will say is controversial. And one thing, I don't know, Mark, I'd like to put the question back to you because you've been a leader as well. And I'll say something very controversially. And I think this happened at the meeting that we were both at. And it wasn't you, it was another leader. But I remember asking him, okay, I'd love your point of view on this because I was like, what is your vision then for the organization that you're leading, right? And he's like, well, it's not about my vision. I'm here as a leader to serve the people, right? And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, okay. And to me, I look, there is no right or wrong answer, right? But I always felt stepping into the leadership of the CAS, I definitely had a point of view, right? Which I'm sure people would disagree with, right? People in the
Hmm.
membership would disagree with. And my
Yep.
point of view was very much, right? Like we do analytics in this PNC insurance space, and we do whatever analytics is useful for this PNC insurance space. If that includes data science and the ability to code, then that is the direction we go in, right? And which you'd be surprised that that was controversial, but to some people they were like, no, we do the traditional actuarial stuff. So I had a definite point of view and I definitely wanted to have that direction to move the organization. But yeah, other people would think, no, like it's not about me and my point of view. It's about the people that I serve, and I don't have a point of view. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate you kicking that back because it is an interesting point, and I think I probably fall more into your camp on that front. And it's not to discount the fact that when you're in a leadership role, you are there to serve people. Absolutely, I don't I'm on board with that. I agree with that. However, if you want to have people follow you, and especially if you're at the helm of an organization that organization has a vision and a mission about what it's trying to accomplish, like your ability to translate that into something that's actionable, right, for people to actually follow and not just be aspirational, but to say if this is the organization's overarching vision, here's my vision for how we're going to accomplish that, right, and how we're going to take it, and especially in some of these actuarial leadership positions, right, they're short term, right? I
Yeah.
was president of the CCA for 1 year. I think it was the same thing for you at CAS. You don't have a ton of time. You've got some buffers around that and president-elect and immediate past president where you still have influence. But when you're actually the one sitting in the chair calling the shots, it's very limited. But I think you do have to create that. You have to have that personal vision of what's the next step. How do we get people from where we're at today to the aspirational place that the organization says we're going, and what is the next step? And it could be very different depending on who's sitting in that chair, right? And so I think I would agree with you that it's not enough to just say I'm there to serve the people, um, because you can't get anything done, or you can get things
Yeah.
done. It just won't get you to the next step towards that aspirational place that, as an organization, you want to get to, right? least that's
Yep,
my take
completely
on
agree.
it. I think you're the first person to turn one of my questions around on me in all the years that I've been doing this, but which I like. I'm good with that. All right. So when you think about people that are able to do that, to provide that vision, who are some of your role models? Who comes to mind when you think about, that's somebody that I like the way that they lead. I could see myself trying to model some of my own leadership style after them.
Yeah, good question. I think about my old bosses, right? So and look, they're not very well, I guess maybe they're famous in actuarial circles in some respect. But Peter Hahn was my old boss at Zurich, so he was a great leader, was very humble, was really great at managing people. I'm sure he still is. He's still around. Um, in the industry. And then Don Mango uh, is, someone pretty well known on the PNC actuarial side. So he was my boss at Guy Carpenter, and I also learned a lot from him as well. Yeah.
Um, so thinking about the future of the profession, I mean, you've already touched on some of this stuff. Like we've got to embrace new things, be it data analytics, AI, whatever the new tools are that can help us in within the profession. So when you think about future successful leaders within the actuarial profession, like what are the things they need to be doing? What's the imperatives?
Mm. Future successful leaders within the actuarial profession. Um, Honestly, just it's always about the intersection of analytics and the business, right? Um, And the more you're at that very edge of both of those things, I think the more value you can bring. So what I see a lot, look, analytics is, and again, this is what I would always say when I was in leadership of the CAS and trying to move forward here, is that the big data is not going away, right? We can't just sort of pretend this is like a phase. Um, and if we ignore it, it will go away. No, like it's just going to get bigger, right? Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So we can't ignore it. It's only going to keep moving forward. It's only going to get bigger. Um, and the analytics is only going to get more and more complicated, right? And what happens is when analytics gets really fancy, is that you can spend a lot of time building these models and being very, very fancy, and not a lot of time on the business side. And what you will probably find is that you need to spend more time on bringing the two together. So I'll give you an example, right? I'm working with a client right now, right, where they have built a great model, but actually, when you look at the metrics of using the model, that's where the disconnect is, right? That you're not actually using the full, frankly, in some cases, you're not using the model at all. Did you notice, right? So you're not
Mm-hmm.
getting the benefit of spending, like you spent whatever, 6 months on this model, right? But you're not using it at all. That's actually pretty common. And I'm going to guess that as models get more complicated, which they will, right? Obviously, they're not going to get less complicated. They're going to get more and more complicated. You'll have to spend more and more time trying to figure out how to build them. And unfortunately, as a byproduct, you spend less and less time on the business side and trying to get people to use it. And that is obviously just as important, but that is actually harder, right? You can teach someone how to build a model, even a complicated model,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can go to school, you can get a PhD, blah, blah, blah. It's just math or more complicated math. Try convince like 100 underwriters to use it. That is hard and no actual mathematical solution about how to get people to do something that they don't want to do or can't be bothered to do or they don't believe in it or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like that, especially from when you think about it in the context of what we've talked about just in our discussion today. It's understanding what are we trying to accomplish, right? You can, to your point, you can
Yeah.
build models to do a lot of stuff, and you can make them big, and you can make them fancy, and they can be complicated. But if the purpose isn't there and articulated and defined, you're just going to be building models for model's sake, right? And if you
Yeah.
actually want to do something useful with it, um, you have to understand why you're doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, I think that that's such good advice, because the technical piece is very important. Like, no questions there. I think we both agree on that. But understanding how the work we do as an actuary fits in the context of a business, and whether that's you're at a consulting firm, whether you're working in-house somewhere, like, but understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish allows you to apply that actuarial skill set in a way, um, that can help you be successful as an individual and on an enterprise basis as a company.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
I've definitely taken a lot away from our conversation today, Jessica. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And I really appreciate your perspective on leadership, and it's been fascinating to hear about your career so far, and it'll be fun to watch where you continue to go with Octagram in the future. So I want to thank you for joining us. Jessica, if people want to connect with you and follow what you're up to and follow what is going on at Octagram Analytics, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be great.
All right. Well, I want to again encourage everyone to subscribe and like this podcast to help us share stories like Jessica's that can help benefit the actuarial community. The leadership development community of the CCA is open to any actuary. You don't have to be a member of the CCA to join that. Please reach out to join. I want to thank Shannon Peterson of CCA staff for helping produce today's event. Join us for upcoming CCA events and follow us online on social media and on our website. Jessica, again, thank you very much for joining us, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Great. Thanks for having me.